This quick and easy bread pudding is creamy, delicious, and is going to melt in your mouth. Hi, and you're watching Plating It with Wendy, where I share with you recipes which impress with ease. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, share, and comment. And if you haven't subscribed already and you want to try out recipes that turn out right every time, then go ahead, press that subscribe button, and while you're at it, if you hit on that bell icon, you'll be the first one to get notified every time I upload a new video. Now, let's get started. For this recipe, we're going to go in with 3 slices of white bread, trying to cut off only the edges here so that we don't waste too much of the bread. And if you toast the edges, you can make breadcrumbs. We're just going to cut these down into smaller bits. You could even just tear the bread if you wanted. Just going to put them into a bowl. And now let's cut the last slice. If you wanted, you could even keep the crust on the bread and use it, but I prefer cutting it out because I don't like the specks of the darker crust coming into the pudding. Now let's add these pieces also to the bowl. On a medium heat, we're going to bring 2 cups of milk, which is approximately 500 ml, to a boil. And to sweeten it up, we're going to go in with 1/4 cup of white granulated sugar. And while the milk is heating, give it a gentle stir so that the milk does not burn. The milk has started coming to a boil. Now we're going to allow it to keep boiling for another 2 or 3 minutes. This is going to help the milk thicken just a little bit. And now we're going to pour this hot milk on top of the bread. And watch the way the bread is going to absorb it like a sponge. And while the milk is still hot, we're going to toss in 2 tablespoons of room temperature unsalted butter. If you don't have unsalted butter on hand, you could always substitute with salted butter. Just skip the salt later on. And we're just going to press this down till the butter melts, and you'll see how the bread is absorbing all the milk and the butter. The butter adds a lot of flavor to the pudding. Just going to give it a gentle stir. Now we're going to keep this aside to cool down completely and beat up the eggs. Now to get a nice rich custard for our pudding, we're going to go in with 2 large eggs. Just going to put them in this bowl here. And make sure that the eggs are at room temperature. Otherwise, when you add them to the bread, the butter is going to freeze. And that's the second egg. And we're going to go in with 2 egg yolks. And this is going to give the custard a really nice rich flavor. Just going to separate the white out. I'm going to add the yolks along with the eggs. And that's the second yolk. To the eggs, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract and just a tad pinch of salt. Now let's beat this up. To get a creamy smooth texture to our bread pudding, we're going to blend all the ingredients together. The milk has now cooled down, so let's add it in. And let's add in the eggs. Now let's blend it and bring it together. Now we've got that nice smooth mixture. Let's keep it aside and go over to the stove to make our caramel. To make the caramel, we're going to add 1/4 cup of white granulated sugar to a small skillet. And to that, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of water. And here's a tip I'm going to share with you. To prevent the sugar from crystallizing, we're going to add 2 drops of lemon juice. And we're just going to pass it through a strainer. Now we're going to switch our stove onto medium heat and allow the sugar to melt and caramelize. And occasionally, we're just going to give it a light stir. So you can see the sugar has already started to melt, and soon it will start caramelizing. The sugar has started caramelizing, so now you want to keep a close eye on it because you want to take it off the heat and put it back on the heat, because that way you can control the color of the caramel. So as you can see, I'm lifting it off the heat and then placing it back on. And I'm going to continue doing this till I get a nice golden brown color to the caramel. Our caramel is all ready, and we're going to be using a 6-inch round cake pan. So we're just going to pour the caramel in with one hand and swerve the cake pan with the other hand. Now you want to swerve it till you get a nice even layer. Our caramel has cooled and set, so now let's add in our bread pudding mixture. And now we're going to pass the mixture through a sieve so that if there are any bread pieces, we can catch it in the sieve. We're going to be steaming our bread pudding, and so that no water gets into the bread pudding while it's steaming, we're going to cover it with an aluminum foil. And press it down tight so it steams well. Okay, now let's go over to the stove and steam our pudding. We're going to be steaming our pudding in a deep pan. Now you could either go in by putting a metal base at the bottom, but if you don't have one, here's another tip I have for you. Just use 2 kitchen paper towels and place it at the bottom. And now we're going to pour in some water, which is going to come up to half the level of your cake pan. And now we're going to switch our stove onto medium, and we're going to heat the water up just a little bit before we place our pudding inside. Okay, the water has now heated up, so let's place the pudding inside, right in the center. And now we're going to cover it up with a lid and allow it to steam on a medium heat for about 35 to 40 minutes, after which we'll open it and check whether it's ready. It's been about 40 minutes since our pudding has been steaming, so let's check whether it's done. So we're going to take off the lid and carefully using a pair of tongs, just going to lift it up and take a look. Yes, it's done. Can you see that? Our pudding is ready. Let's switch off the heat and now allow it to cool. So now we're going to allow the pudding to cool completely before we cover it up and place it into the refrigerator for about 2 hours before we unmold it. The pudding has been chilling in the fridge for about 2 hours, so now it's time for us to unmold it. Let's take off this cover. So as you can see, it has set well. You'll notice that it has already pulled away from the cake pan, but we're still going to give it a little bit of help by running our offset spatula around, just to make sure that it comes out neatly. Now we're just going to flip it over and give it a few shakes. You can already see the caramel has come down, and now we're going to lift up the cake pan. Wow, and that's a beauty. And because we love to impress, we're going to top it with some caramelized hazelnuts. And if you want to know how to make these, let me know in the comments below, and I will definitely do a video on it. Now let's cut the pudding so we can give it a taste. The knife just slipped through it. Oh my goodness, look at that. Just look at that amazing texture. And now it's time to give our bread pudding a taste. Wow, I'm really excited. God. Wow, the texture is so smooth and it has a lovely hint of caramel flavor to it. You're definitely going to want to try this recipe. So hop onto my website, platingitwithwendy.com. Thanks for watching. See you soon.